Hey, it's James. I just want to welcome everybody in. It's Friday with Friends, another episode, and I've got one of my new friends from Connecticut. I met him when I was down in Dallas, but he's in Connecticut. He's going to tell us all about the market in Connecticut, what's going on, and what you need to know about finding a great place when you're thinking about moving to Connecticut. Hey, Jason, how you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
Good, James. How are you? And thanks for
I'm
having
good.
me.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great meeting you down when we were in Dallas, talking about all things Connecticut and what's going on. And even though you're a big Yankees fan, we're going to let you slide on that today.
Well, thank you, I guess.
Yeah, even though I'm in Chicago, I'm born and raised in Boston, and followed the Red Sox as a kid. And so, for most people in New England, you've got two favorite teams: the Red Sox and anybody who's playing the Yankees.
Yeah, right. And yeah, it's pretty 50-50 around here between Yankees, Red Sox.
Okay, well, I mean, you are a little bit closer.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a little south of Hartford, so tend to get a little more Yankees as you go south of Hartford and closer to the shore.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So tell me about the Connecticut market. What's going on there?
Yeah, Connecticut market, we've seen super, super low inventory and continuing lower.
Okay.
So it's funny, I was just answering a question we've been getting a lot of buyers from New Jersey and New York that have been moving into Connecticut.
Okay.
And so I've been answering this question a lot recently, like, hey, what's the average sale price there? So year to date in Connecticut, average sale price is $490,000. That's up 4.5% from the $471,000 last year. So that's kind of where we're seeing just super low inventory, still seeing a lot of multiple offer situations. A number of houses have gone for 50 to even 100 grand over list price.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. We saw the takeoff the COVID market.
Yeah.
The 2022 market slowed down a little bit, adjusting for higher interest rates. And then ever since like February of this year, it's kind of taken back off. So yeah, that's kind of where we've seen things. So it's a tough market for buyers in Connecticut right now. Great market for sellers.
Yeah, it's very good to be a seller. We have the same issue, but the difference between what we're seeing and what you're seeing is that when we go over ask, we sometimes, we most of the time we're 20 to 30. Occasionally I've seen like a 50, but never over 100.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the appraiser brings it back down. So we were doing appraisal gap waivers on some of the small stuff, but we're not way crazy. I've heard about what you're doing through, like, with most of the people in California.
And it's very location specific in Connecticut.
Sure.
Like some of the higher priced towns that have the high demand school systems, like a West Hartford or a Glastonbury, or once you go down to the shoreline, like an Old Saybrook, you're seeing a lot of that. $100,000 above list price is somewhat normal. It's weird to say that that's normal, but right, those are very high demand, higher priced areas. But some of the places with lower average purchase price, we're still seeing 20 to 40,000 above list price.
Okay. All right. So you're still seeing some good numbers and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it really just depends. Now I'm pulling up a map if I can figure out the best way to add that in, to see if we can learn a little bit more about geography.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so let's see. There we go. So this is Connecticut.
Look at you, tech savvy.
Where are you?
Yeah, so I work out of my home office in Hebron, Connecticut. So see on there where it says, right near where you are. So
right here, East Haddam.
Little north of there would be Hebron.
All right.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that's generally, and I'll cover. So Connecticut's a small state, so
Yeah.
I'll cover generally like a 30-mile radius. But believe it or not, in doing that, I've covered the entire state for certain people, but if staying within that 30-mile radius, I can cover close to 2/3 of the state.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, 30-mile radius. I mean, Connecticut's a little bit smaller, probably a little bit bigger than where I'm at in just my county, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Illinois is pretty big, but I focus in Lake County. I get down to Chicago. It's an hour drive from where I am into the city. But I mean, you can get pretty much from corner to corner in an hour in Connecticut, right?
Corner to corner, you're a little more like an hour and a half.
Okay. Yeah, I know the traffic's pretty dense there.
Yeah. Depending on, if you're in 95, especially if you're going along the shoreline, that can get pretty dense.
Okay.
But so we'll generally cover, right? You had kind of highlighted where we are. We'll go all the way down to the shoreline. So we'll hit like Old Saybrook, Clinton. We've actually helped there's Groton has a sub base.
Yeah.
Of electric boat. So we've actually helped quite a few people moving in to work at electric boat, find a home in the surrounding areas of Groton.
Where's Groton?
Groton's going to be if you go to the east along the shoreline.
Yep.
Yeah, and you see that river there where it says New London.
Oh, okay.
Groton is just on the other side of New London on that river there.
Okay, so it's in the river.
Yep.
All right.
So so the subs they come up from the Atlantic, right?
Yep.
And they come up the river there into Groton.
Yeah, so that's a pretty solid naval base, a good area there for all the nuke guys, all the submarine guys.
Yeah, and then if you're big into sailing or any of that type of stuff, Mystic is a popular destination. So is Old Saybrook.
Mystic Pizza, the Julia Roberts movie.
Yeah, that's everyone knows that movie. Mystic's also home to, they actually have Mystic Seaport. They have an aquarium. Mystic is actually really, really cool downtown area. And I think, believe it or not, a lot of the tourism comes from that movie.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Everyone's looking for Julia.
On the off chance we find Julia Roberts working in the pizza place.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right. So when we talked a little bit about, so you do a lot of work with the Navy folks?
Yeah, a decent amount. Yep. Like I said, a lot of people relocating into Connecticut, working at Electric Boat. So we helped a lot of them. Connecticut, they used to call it the insurance capital of the world, coming out of Hartford. Believe it or not, some of them have been moving to Texas and some other states for tax discounts, but it is still a big insurance state. So, Travelers and a lot of the insurance companies in Hartford are a big employer. So ironically though, right, so a lot of people wanted to live around Hartford. So you'd get like a lot of people didn't want to live in Hartford, live in the suburbs around. So they'd go to Glastonbury, Farmington, some of those surround Newington, Wethersfield, some of those surrounding towns. And we still see quite a bit of that. But, ever since work from home and COVID has become more acceptable, we've seen a lot of people willing to travel further out, wanting to be near water communities. So we've actually seen an increased demand in lake communities where people can work from home, and why not live by a lake? Same thing down by the shoreline. So we've actually seen property values increase faster than the state average in those water communities. And a big reason is, that COVID and the ability to work from home.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that as well. Have you started to see a little bit of shrinkage in the commercial market with a lot of commercial normally businesses, they would shrink their size and more vacancies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We've noticed a lot of vacancies in the commercial, especially office space markets. And I'm actually I think for larger developers, there might be some opportunities there for repurposing that space in the future.
Yep.
I don't see it going back. I just don't.
Yeah, Allstate has a big campus here. They used to, and they're in the process of tearing it down. And so I think about that space, and I think, it's right next to the highway. And I think, well, that would make good, residences. It could be good apartment living sort of thing. And then I also think next to it, there's a big like warehouse space. And because it's right next to the highway, the tollway here, that would be a good space for like a commercial situation, like an Amazon, to come build a big distribution center there, something on those lines. So I was thinking, well, why are they tearing this down? Couldn't they just repurpose it? But if they're going to do something along those lines, they need, a fresh building to suit their needs. They can't repurpose a building.
Right. Yeah, we actually had a couple years ago a new Amazon facility open up here just outside of Bradley Airport. And it's massive, and it's just giant industrial building, and it's insane to see what Amazon's doing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a COVID thing, right? We all use that, a lot. And so they've expanded where other companies have contracted. So,
in here, guilty, right?
Yeah. I mean, you've got lots of books on your shelves. They didn't come from Barnes and Noble, chances are.
Exactly.
So with Connecticut being, I don't want to say small, but the size that it is, do you work across borders? Do you work in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, or New York?
No, I don't. I know some agents who do, and they'll be dual licensed in either Massachusetts or Rhode Island. I feel that real estate is so location specific. I've had clients that are going to move to those areas, and what I usually do is I'll interview and I'll refer them to someone who's more of an expert in that area.
Sure.
I feel like I'm not giving a good enough level of service if I don't really know an area. And I feel I'm providing better service to the client by referring them out to someone who's an expert in that location. And seeing as I'm kind of central-ish Connecticut, it's a ways for me to cross a border. So it's not something that I really do.
Yeah, that's smart, right? So, and I agree with that because that's what I do. We're in Illinois, and we are just south of the Wisconsin border, right? So I can cross the border in 15, 20 minutes, but I don't do a lot of work up there. And if it's like where we are, there's two different states and they have two different sets of rules. So we rely heavily on attorneys in that process, and Wisconsin does not. So, and I like to think, look, you can work with an agent who works both sides of the border, but chances are good they're not going to be good at either one because you can't really master one if you've got two.
Right. No, I completely agree.
So I focus on just Illinois. I'm really good at that, and that's what I do. And if somebody wants to be on the border, then we're going to introduce them to a great Wisconsin agent. Because there's a difference between Illinois and Wisconsin, right? And if people don't know the differences, that's when they don't know where they want to live, which only creates more challenges later down the road.
Right. Yeah. And same, like if people come in and tell me they want a certain type of school system or a certain type of neighborhood, right? I can help with that in Connecticut. I don't know those very well in Massachusetts or Rhode Island. So that's where I feel like that level of service is off, and I'm better off referring them to an expert in that area.
Right. And there's a lot of differences between school systems in one district or another. And now you're talking about crossing into another state.
Right.
You could, whole different, administration and philosophy. So a lot of things could change, not just little things.
Yeah, completely agree.
So who are some of the bigger employers that are bringing people to Connecticut other than, Electric Boat and the Navy?
Yeah. So you got actually right next to there is also the Coast Guard Academy.
Okay.
So we have a lot of people coming in for Coast Guard Academy. Um, and that kind of, then as you move further down the shoreline, right, you have the area just out of New York. So you have the Stamford, Norwalk area.
Oh, sure.
You get a lot of people coming out of the city into Connecticut to that area. So a lot of people actually work in New York, but will live, Greenwich, Stamford, Norwalk area. And then more north around Hartford, you have all the insurance companies and then a lot of hospitals. You got like Hartford Healthcare is a big one here. And a lot of medical and hospital facilities in the area.
Okay. So, I mean, everybody's got a lot of medical. There's always a shortage of nurses, right? So I never heard anybody complain that they have too many nurses.
Right.
So, and as long as you got people, you're gonna need some kind of medical because everybody's always sick. So that's good to have a good hospital population, things going along, and always people coming and going. And what are the things that buyers need to know if they're moving to Connecticut from other places? How is Connecticut different from some other places?
Yeah. It's really, really neighborhood specific. So like one of the things we really, if people don't know Connecticut, but they're moving here for work, that's, what we really kind of dig into is what do they like to do in their free time? What type of neighborhood do they like to live in? Do they want to be close to shopping? Do they care about certain school systems? Like we really just kind of dig in and what they're looking for, where their actual employer is, if commute is something that's important. And it's so different because in Connecticut, you can have densely populated areas like Hartford, and you can go 15 minutes away and have more rural areas where there's 1 acre, 2 acre lots, with single family houses. So it's within 15 minutes in either direction, you can be in someplace so different. It's hard to generalize, it's really, really, like I said, it's based on the individual and very individual specific.
Okay. All right. Now, is there new construction there?
Not a lot. There is some, but like new build permits have been staying pretty low.
Okay.
And it's definitely one of the things contributing to the shortage of housing. During right before 2008, Connecticut was just like everyone else, where new builds were going crazy.
Yep.
But ever since then, a lot of builders went under. A lot of builders lost a lot of money then, and it just really hasn't come back. And it's definitely not keeping pace with demand currently.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a place like Connecticut and all of New England, there's a lot of built up infrastructure there already, so it can be hard to find place to grow. So what's the typical age of homes that you're selling?
Yeah, a majority of the homes, I mean, they range, right? So, I mean, we've sold homes built in 1900, and
Yep.
we've sold homes built in, 2010, and we're going to be selling a new build come early fall. So, I mean, it really runs the gamut. The most common range that we're seeing resale is probably something built anywhere from the 50s to the 70s.
Okay.
There was a huge building boom in Connecticut during that time frame. So you got a large amount of houses that were built then.
Yep.
So that's probably the most common resale.
Okay. So somewhere between the 50s and the 70s.
Yeah.
And for most of those, I'm just trying to think of the home that I grew up in. I have no idea. I'm up from Boston, and I have no idea when it was built, but that home had, by today's standards, tiny closets. It didn't have a master suite. It had one bathroom. We had 2 bedrooms. So what are you seeing in homes like that you're doing from the 50s to the 70s? Are those 2.5 baths, or does that have to have done a remodel to have that?
Yeah, it depends. Some of them have been remodeled, and like you said, a lot of those rooms were small back in those houses. So you see a lot of capes and ranches tend to be the most common that were built back then. And with the smaller rooms, like what we see a lot of people do is they try to add on and create as much of a master suite as they can.
Sure.
But it's a small bathroom with a stand-up shower for the master. So that's kind of the most common renovation we'll see in those style houses. You do see a lot of 1.5 bath, or you see the 2.5 bath, but it's been the small add-on that's been little bump out made onto that master.
Okay. All right. So, who are your best, sellers, right? If they're selling a home, are they staying in Connecticut, or are they going somewhere else, or where are they moving to? Are they moving up, or are they moving out?
Yeah. Yeah, all of the above, really. I've helped a number of sellers. Just helped one woman who sold her house here in Connecticut, right? All her kids went away to college. She had, a big colonial, 3,200 square foot colonial. We sold that in 4 days for 51 grand over list price. And she moved down to Delaware. She wanted to downsize to a condo by the water.
Nice.
Yeah. Then, we helped another family recently buy and sell at the same time. They had early 70s built ranch in a town called Colchester. They had outgrown it, and they wanted a larger colonial in a town called East Hampton. So we helped them sell their house, tap into their equity, and then upsize, which was literally just the next town over. But they wanted to be in that school system because they had friends and family in that school system. And they're like, their dream was to have all their kids grow up together, play Little League together, all that. So they wanted to move the next town over. And then, we recently helped an older woman who, the family had moved out, and she just wanted to downsize to a small condo. So we helped her sell her larger house and downsize to a condo. So, I mean, it's like anything real estate. It's kind of based on the individual. And
sure,
we try to, in true Phil Jones style, we try to find out what they really want, what their goals are, and then help them accomplish it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. I'm finding a lot of times where people are moving out of Illinois, they're moving someplace to retire, moving someplace to get warm, or they're like you said, empty nesters, and they're going someplace different. So a lot of people are moving away because of the weather, because of taxes, or other issues. But more sellers are leaving than staying around.
Yeah, Connecticut's pretty flat. If you go back over the last few years, historically there was about 1% of the population was leaving each year, so it was declining. A lot of people were going to Florida, right, for tax purposes. And then during COVID, we actually had a bump, so there were actually more people moving into Connecticut than leaving. And then kind of post-COVID, as it's settled, it's kind of been leveling out. So I'm interested to see if we kind of return to that post-COVID environment, or where we kind of settle as the dust comes off from COVID.
Yeah, I could totally see people moving to Connecticut because of the shoreline, to get closer to that. There's a lot of Massachusetts that doesn't have shoreline. Springfield to the Berkshires, and a lot of New York doesn't have shoreline. So that's an easy way to get some of it, and it might be a little bit more economical than New York.
Right, and that's most of the people that I've helped moving into the state have been coming from New York or New Jersey. either for work or because they now can work remotely and they wanted to live someplace that had a little more space, a little bit more rural. And then we've also, like I said, helped a lot of people moving to Connecticut because they were stationed here at Electric Boat.
Sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, I appreciate you coming and joining us and telling everybody about what's happening in Connecticut and what the market looks like.
Yeah.
If you are thinking about making a move to Connecticut or anywhere in New England, go ahead and reach out and talk to Jason. If you have any questions, you can touch base with Jason. His number's right there on the screen, or you can give me a call. I'm happy to get you connected with Jason or anybody that suits your needs. If you're thinking about one of the New England states, I can't speak highly enough about New England because I grew up there. I love it. And I appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And another way too, if people want to check me out, they can either look me up on Google. I have a Google business profile, or on Instagram, just jasonboice.realtor. Should be able to find me on there. We do a lot of social media, either information about the market or, that type of stuff. So they can also find me there.
Perfect. Hey, thanks again, Jason. Have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.